Hi, I'm Euan.
And I'm Sarah.
And this is
Popcorn and Cumin, a transatlantic dive into film and media.
With a healthy side of unrelated nonsense.
Hello and welcome to Popcorn and Cumin. We were not going to record this episode, but after attending the theater and seeing this movie, the movie theater, we felt that we had to rant. We had to share our thoughts of this atrocity of a movie.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far. I didn't think it was great.
No, I'll take it back.
I don't feel totally convicted by it one way or the other to even rant. I feel like I'm just kind of felt deflated after it in some ways.
We haven't even said what we're going to be talking about yet, but I'm sure that you could probably guess based on
the title of the podcast, probably.
That and our distaste, because our distaste is widespread throughout the world and everyone who has seen this movie. Maybe not everybody, but anyway, we are talking about Joker. Folie, Deux. I saw a compilation of like newscasters and people attempting to pronounce it, and it was very, very funny how bad people were at it. You would think they would be prompted how to do it beforehand.
Now I know how to say this because Folie Deux is the name of Fall Out Boy's fourth studio album, and when I liked Fall Out Boy, well, I still think they're all right, but when I was a teenager, I quite liked Fall Out Boy, and that was my favorite album by them. But even at the time, it was not very well received, and when they would play songs from it, they would get booed at their concerts because people didn't like the album, and then they went into like a 5-year hiatus, and then they came back and were terrible for like 10 years because they just made generic pop shit music. So
well, that's sad.
Yeah.
What does Folie à Deux mean?
I believe it means the madness of two.
Oh.
But you're the French speaker, so what does folie mean?
To be honest, that was the word that I didn't know.
Okay.
I don't
Something
think
the
word madness comes up in everyday speech. You know, when you're learning French, it's more asking things like, what color is your dog? Where are you from? What did you do on vacation last week?
I think it'd be more important to establish if someone was mad or not.
That's true.
Are you mad? Are you the Joker?
Are you mad? Anyway, first we have to do
Oh, God.
What is it?
Cross-border factoids.
Cross-border factoids. Are you prepared, Euan?
I'm not prepared at all.
Well, we have to do it because I have a whole list going now.
Okay. Well, Sarah's giving us one, and if I think of a rebuttal while she's telling me it, I'll share one.
Okay. I think that more have been coming to me because I have recently started a new job where I'm now actually working in like a big office space, like a giant company with a whole bunch of British people. And previously, I feel like I actually wasn't being exposed to that many British people. But now I'm constantly exposed to them in all their ways, their cultural ways. So anyway, I think that this is less of a thing now and more of a thing of like my parents' generation and earlier. But I think in some states, this is still quite common that Americans, especially with Midwesterners, I would say, but maybe Americans in general, drink milk like in a glass with dinner, with meals, and that is simply not done here in the UK, and people scoff and think it's crazy. Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's weird. I mean, I don't know where that would stem from in the States, like why the insistence on milk. Maybe it's because in the UK there's more of like the tea drinking culture, and people have tea with their milk, or rather milk with their tea.
Tea with their milk.
And then you have milk with cereal, and milk is used for like baking and stuff, but we're not like obsessed with just, you know, neck and back gallons of milk and stuff. Sarah used to have somewhat of a relationship with someone whose claim to fame was drinking lots of milk at once. And
chugging a gallon of milk. So I say that it was like our parents' generation, but also when I was growing up, there was a whole kind of movement of like milk is like healthy and provides calcium and protein and a bunch of stuff. And there was the whole Got Milk ad campaign, which then I think created this idea that like you had to give your kids milk so that they would like grow strong bones, and it would help with their
Yeah,
growth.
I think it's just we haven't really as a species like understood many things for like that long of a time, considering humans have been around for thousands and thousands of years.
This
and we've
is
had
really a jump
civilizations.
into like
Well, it's just, like actual factual understanding of how nutrition and things like that work. I feel like it's only been in the past 10 years or so. I mean, maybe a bit longer that we've actually been able to develop some sort of idea. Because it used to be we had these like ideas of like the food groups and stuff like this. And I think that was all like total nonsense. Like people would like, there's also like the 5 fruit and veg a day thing. And then people would like structure their whole life around that. And, it's just all...
I think that's correct. What do you mean? You don't...
I'm sure there's something about the food groups being like kind of nonsense, or at least the way they were like being taught as it was like not as healthy as, because it was kind of like fat is bad, carbohydrates good or something. It's like more nuanced than that, I think. Some fats are good and some are bad.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if... I can't remember what the food groups were.
Now I feel like we're in a state of mind where people are just like, they see the word protein and they think that means good.
I know.
The amount of stuff when you go into a supermarket and it's just random crap. It's just like, will be, I don't know, like a chocolate bar or something. But then it says protein on it and everyone's like, give me that, I need it. It'll make me ripped overnight if I eat this one protein thing.
Yeah. See, my dad, sorry dad if you're listening to this, but my dad is like that, but with fiber. If anything says fiber on it, it doesn't matter if it has 100 grams of sugar. To him, that means it's healthy.
But I think having too much fiber can actually be bad as well, right?
Oh, yes.
Because it hurts your bowel movements, I believe.
Yes. Fiber is weird. Like, never mind. We don't have to go into that.
God.
But I feel like
Who knows
no
what she was
matter
gonna say.
no matter what your digestion bowel problem, like if it's, there's kind of two issues you could have. No matter which issue I have, I feel like often the solution to both is have more fiber, which doesn't really make sense, but it has something to do with regulating that, I guess. Anyway, that's my factoid.
I did think of a difference, but
Okay.
it's somewhat political, so you might roll your eyes at this.
Oh, dear.
So in the UK, I feel like there's like less, at least television media is less partisan. It's less purely liberal or purely conservative or whatever. And so when political figures are being interviewed in the UK, generally speaking, people don't really do like television interviews where there's like softballs. Like they just are given an interview to like make them look good, and they get asked a bunch of easy questions with no pushback. But obviously, we're leading up to the US election, maybe the most important election in our respective lifetimes so far. And almost all of the television appearances, and now it's even going into sort of more mainstream podcasts, Trump and Harris to some extent are talking with totally uninformed podcast hosts or interviewers. But an example is that Harris just did an interview on Fox News, and people are sort of saying like, wow, I can't believe she did this interview. It was like really quite like tough questioning and stuff. And some of the British analysis I've seen on this are being like, it's interesting that that's being seen as like this really, hard nails interview for her to do, because this is just like a standard interview that you would do in the UK. And you sometimes see like American conservative talking heads like your Jordan Petersons or your Ben Shapiro's. There's been a couple instances when they've been interviewed by British interviewers and they don't know who they are, and then they ask them kind of difficult questions and they're like, I can't believe you're asking me these questions. Like they like visibly panic. So my difference, Sarah, is that media interviewers are less partisan in the UK and people do proper journalism here.
Well, that was a rude way to put that. I'm going to change mine to people in the UK are idiots who don't drink milk.
You don't drink milk either.
I don't drink cow milk.
Coo milk.
Yeah. Well, much of my family in the Midwest would be offended by my lack of drinking cow milk. Well, maybe not everyone. My grandma would be.
Your mom's offended by it.
My mom is offended by it. But anyway, that's an interesting one, I suppose. I think I was watching a presentation on trends or something, and now influencers are... something like 25% of influencers are being approached to do like political campaign promotion, basically, which I don't know is interesting.
Yeah. If you're listening, either John Swinney, Keir Starmer, Conservative Party doesn't have a leader anymore. Boris Johnson, you're doing your rounds now. Liz Truss, come on Popcorn Cumin and I'll grill you. Don't worry about that. You're getting no softballs from me.
All right. So moving on from the differences.
That's done now. That's parked. Now let's see if we have any differences on Joker Folie Deux.
Yes. So we will start off with non-spoilers, but maybe not too long on that. So in case you were thinking about seeing the movie, maybe we can convince you maybe not to. Yeah. Unless you want to hear our full analysis, in which case then you can watch the movie and listen past the non-spoilers.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really think there's like that much in the movie that someone would be absolutely heartbroken if it was spoiled for them, apart from the very end, maybe.
Because let me tell you that in this movie, nothing happens.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah. Basically, the premise of the movie is that Joker, or Arthur Fleck, after the events of Joker 1, is now institutionalized. We're not really sure. We were talking about this before recording, if he's in Arkham Asylum, so like a mental institution, or just a prison, and he's going to be moved into like a mental institution. It seemed as if, because his lawyer is saying that like they're basically going to try and get him to not fit to be prosecuted criminally because he's got mental illness, and then he can get looked after by proper doctors. But if he's already in an asylum of sort, you're thinking, where's he going to go from here? The good asylum? You have Arkham Asylum and the nice asylum as well. So that wasn't clear, but he's now institutionalized. The movie opens with a pretty cool cartoon little thing. That was probably the highlight of the movie.
I agree.
Warner Brothers, a Looney Tunes style Joker animation where he's fighting with his shadow. It reminded me of the Tool song 46 and 2, which is about someone fighting with their shadow. I liked that. And then the movie then takes a big dip where we are then treated to the Joker or Arthur Fleck walking through some prison corridors for about 15 minutes.
So long. He was just walking through the corridor. I was like, wow, we've been sitting here for 20 minutes and watched someone walk through a hallway.
He then meets Harley Quinn, who is a character is recently now much more popular because of her portrayal by Margot Robbie in the Suicide Squad movies.
Isn't that recent?
Well, it's in the past 10 years or so. She was originally created in the 1990s Batman the Animated Series cartoon, so she's not actually originally a comic book character.
And Euan tells me that she was created solely for the purpose of being the Joker's woman, which I don't like.
Well, all fictional characters are created with a purpose in mind. They're not living, breathing people.
Yeah, but this woman's purpose was entirely to be based on a man's character.
To some degree, yeah. So in the comics, the traditional origin of Harley Quinn is that she is his assigned psychiatrist at Arkham Asylum after the Joker is caught at some point, and the Joker manages through his maniacal ways to turn her into being infatuated with him, both romantically and just kind of as in a more obsessive way, and then they become a kind of item, and depending on how dark the story you're reading in, it's either a kind of, I would say, a toxic relationship or a very highly abusive relationship.
Both bad things.
Yeah. So, as you can tell from the poster and the title of the movie, The Madness of Two, the premise of this is Joker / Arthur Fleck then meets, I think they call her Lee Quinn in this for some reason, but Harley Quinn.
No, well, maybe that's her nickname, but when they have one of their performances, it says Harley and Joker or something. Harley, yeah.
They managed to bond together through a prison music group, and then that sort of gives way to the other part of the movie, which is that it's actually a musical. The first Joker movie was not a musical. This one is kind of a musical. We will talk if we feel like it deserves the title of being attributed a musical, probably as we go through this. Sarah has fact-checked me, and her actual name in this is Harleen, and then as a nickname, Lee Quinzel.
That's so stupid.
Yeah. I can't remember what her name in the comics is now.
Isn't it Harley Quinn?
No, I think it's short for something. Harley, maybe it is Harley Quinzel or something.
Oh, okay. Well, we recalled that a harlequin
is a jester figure from Italian theatre from, I think, the Renaissance. So whoever came up with that name, smart. You're a smart little cookie.
Good thinking.
Good job. And then the film then goes on to the Joker is basically being, tried for his crimes that he committed in the first movie. So the 5 people that he murdered, but he actually killed 6 people in the first movie. But they only know about 5, the authorities. And then it becomes a kind of courtroom drama. unlike other exciting courtroom dramas you might have seen, so things like Primal Fear, which I don't actually think is that good, but 12 Angry Men, things like that. This is a courtroom drama where what happens in the courtroom drama actually has no bearing on the plot at all. Look forward to that. So you'll be glad for the hours you spend in this courtroom, because actually none of it matters at all.
No. And that's why I feel like it could have been an interesting courtroom, I don't know, drama type thing. It felt like all of their ideas had potential, but then ultimately fell short of being anything.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it really works as an exploration of mental health and mental illness and whether people who have mental illness are fit to stand trial and should go through the criminal system.
Right. Shall we get into that?
Go ahead, Sarah.
All right.
It sounds like you've done some research.
Well, only a little bit, to be honest. So in the film, I don't think this is a spoiler, that the Joker's defense attorney,
Yeah.
Is she a public defender or just...
Presumably.
Yeah.
He's got no cash behind him.
Her main strategy is, of course, to plead insanity, which is often used in, I don't know, in films and TV, and perhaps is often used as a last straw. I think when I was working for the DA, sometimes it was used when the person is very clearly guilty, and that can be really the only way of trying to lessen the sentence.
Well, particularly in the US, probably when it's you either you're going to face the death penalty or...
Oh my goodness, we've had this conversation so many times. Depending on the state you're in.
But that's in this movie.
Yeah, in this movie.
So it makes sense.
Yes.
If you'd try anything.
Right. Yeah. So the DA, Harvey Dent, is he the DA?
Yeah.
He is prosecuting, is this the right word, for pushing for the death sentence.
Yeah, on behalf of the state of New York.
Right, because apparently Gotham is in New York, specifically in this movie, and it looks exactly a lot like New York, so I'm confused. Is it just maybe New York?
Well, it is filmed in New York, but Gotham is meant to be a city that is not... Maybe it is meant to be New York, I don't know. But it's meant to be a city separate from New York. But I'm not sure within the lore where Gotham is meant to be. Me and Sarah were just in New York recently, and I didn't see really any space for it to just be another massive city that looks exactly like New York.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Apparently, Gotham is generally in the comics thought to be in the state of New Jersey, or maybe not in the comics, I don't know, in the lore, and is based on influenced by Chicago and New York and London. Mm-hmm. This is what the internet says, at least. So back to the plea of insanity. Basically, I think there are, first of all, there's two different insanity pleads. There's saying that someone is not fit to stand trial, in which case there would be no trial. They would go to probably, I guess, in Gotham, a mental institution until they are fit to stand trial,
and
ever.
They go through that step in the movie where he's assessed on whether he can stand trial. But the defender, his lawyer, says that people are always found to be able to stand trial. So
that's the first kind of insanity...
Your first out.
Defense, yes. Yeah. But now that we're actually in the trial, the insanity defense, now there is the defense must prove... This is according to the Cornell Law School.
Cornell? Inferior to Dartmouth, I've heard.
So they have to prove by clear and convincing evidence that at the time of the commission of the acts constituting the offense, the defendant, as a result of a severe mental disease or defect, was unable to appreciate the nature and quality or wrongfulness of his acts. So
Who wrote that, Broccoli Rob?
No, this was in 1984. It was the Comprehensive Crime Control Act passed and signed by Ronald Reagan.
Oh.
I don't think he wrote that, though. But then it's generally considered to be a return to... So the standard of knowing right from wrong is an important part. So if you don't have an understanding of, morality, then you can't... The murder is considered less. It's, because the intent is less... Yeah.
Well, this is what we were taught in criminal law in Scotland, was for there to be a criminal act, you have to have two components, which is actus reus and mens rea. And mens rea is the intention to commit a criminal act, and actus reus is the act of doing so. And you can only have like one without the other for there to be a criminal act.
Yeah.
So doing something that could be construed as criminal might not necessarily be a criminal act unless you have the intent to do so. That's where your different charges of like manslaughter, etc. come in. So if I smack someone over the head and it kills them, then on the face of it, that would be an act of violence that kills someone. So that's the actus reus. But if I was doing it in self-defense, I'm not doing it to kill someone. It's my intention is to protect myself.
Yeah.
So
Please don't do that.
smack someone over the head.
Yeah.
What if it's in self-defense though? To protect you.
I can protect myself.
Yeah, true.
We can do it together. Co-murderers.
Yeah.
This is not good.
Co-defenders.
Yeah. So, and then you can represent us.
Yeah.
We'll be like Bonnie and Clyde.
Yeah, but I'll fire our lawyer halfway through, and I'll say I'll represent myself, thank you very much, and then I'll come in dressed as a clown.
But you're the lawyer, so you're going to fire yourself?
Yeah, well, even a lawyer I don't think would represent themselves, generally speaking.
Well, whatever.
People very rarely represent themselves.
Okay, so anyway, I do think that the intent thing, also, that comes into the like first degree murder, second degree manslaughter, all that stuff. And then the plea of insanity is like slightly different, but is still similar in that it's like an understanding of the act that you're committing, the morality of the act that you're committing. But anyway, to do this plea, the defense attorney, her main argument is that Arthur has dissociative identity disorder.
A split personality.
Yes. Previously known
in my brain.
Previously known as multiple personality disorder or split personality, now is known as dissociative identity disorder.
I just feel this shit is like so tired in fiction at
It's
this point.
so
It's like
overused.
Yeah.
It's so overused. Yeah, it's quite a trope, and I don't like when it is used. Especially I don't like when it is used as like a very common trope within the trope is that it's like a man who then has a different personality that's like a woman, and then they like dress up as a woman and kill people. I think that is bad. So there are a few different types of dissociative disorders. One is depersonalization or derealization. So depersonalization is when you feel detached from your mind or body. Derealization is when it feels like the world around you isn't real. And all of these dissociative disorders are generally as a reaction to some kind of very traumatic or very stressful event. So that's one. And then there's also dissociative amnesia, which, as you can guess, is creating lapses in the memory, specifically around a traumatic event. The memory loss doesn't have to be specifically of that event, but it is the event that then creates this dissociation, which creates the memory loss. The last one is dissociative identity disorder, aka multiple personality disorder, whatever, in which the person
Can someone create 18 different personalities for themselves and one of them allows them to climb upside down on ceilings like some sort of spider creature?
What is that from?
The movie Split.
Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, theoretically, anything is possible.
I'm not sure theoretically anything is possible, actually.
It is.
Okay.
That's the truth. So, symptoms of dissociative identity disorder include the existence of two or more distinct personalities or identities, which can be accompanied by changes in behavior or even like likes and dislikes. So you're switching like people, like you would see in TV shows or whatever. This can also come with memory loss because you'll have different memories associated with different personalities, especially if you're dissociating from some kind of trauma. If you're creating a new identity to dissociate from that, then the memory of that trauma might be with the other identity.
But the idea would be that like you are a different person, that you like there's no like overlap, as opposed to someone, for instance, who might be like gender fluid, who just is like expressing themselves in a different way depending on how they're feeling.
Yeah, I think there has to be distinct borders between personalities, because we all, have
Our up days and our bad days.
Or like, you know, act differently around certain people than other people. That doesn't mean that we have dissociative identity disorder, but you have to have, distinct switches in personality, and the person can like feel differently, like sometimes their body feels differently depending on what identity they're in. Sometimes they can have different genders depending on which identity they're in, stuff like that. So they can feel like they have two or more identities within one body, and each with its own way of thinking and remembering about him or herself or their life and all of that stuff. So yeah, that is dissociative identity disorder. It is extraordinarily rare. It doesn't, at least in this case, like it would make sense that he has some kind of dissociative disorder, given it's often like childhood trauma that creates these disorders, or that from which these disorders manifest. So at least in Arthur's case, it somewhat makes sense. But in other movies and stuff, it'll just be, you know, the twist is, oh, he's got multiple personalities. Who knew? So yeah, but there was my little deep dive into dissociative identity disorder.
Yeah, and I think one of the frustrations with the film is just like I feel like it doesn't really say anything succinctly in regards to like mental health. Like there's clearly issues with the criminal justice system where, you know, people who are mentally ill are being tried for things that they didn't really have any sort of control over. And then if they're in a prison or in a mental institution, they like face these like horrific abuses, and there's a real pain and sadness in the fact that people are basically developed these mental disorders from trauma that they might have experienced when they were children, and becomes a kind of like cycle of abuse and pain and everything. But I feel like the idea was we need to have him be shown to be like not the martyr or this like hero that his like weird sycophantic fans within the story associate him with, and be like, no, you are like guilty of being a nut job who like killed some people, but you knew what you were doing. But the way he acts, I feel like he almost does have the like dissociative thing, or at least like there's some sort of thing that comes over him, because he goes from sometimes being totally like almost like borderline non-verbal, non-able to like do anything, to just having these complete sort of episodes of energy and performance and whatnot.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I'm not sure that necessarily makes him insane, but he certainly has some sort of mental issues going on.
Yeah. So within the movie, this again isn't a spoiler because nothing happens, but within the movie, he several times goes into these kind of like performances, often with
Harley Quinn.
Harley Quinn.
Harlequin.
Where he like goes on stage, or he's hosting his own singing show, or he goes into these like performances, and it's clearly this kind of like fantasy world, and there's constantly allusions to him being lost in a fantasy world, which again points to like that is his way of dissociating, is by going into this fantasy, which I thought that was like a good idea.
I wish the whole movie was like the fantasy stuff. It would have been more entertaining. Like those were the best parts of it because it was less boring.
But even the songs I thought were like boring.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah. The ones that had a bit more like production and like performance, that wasn't the kind of lame breathy singing throughout it. Like that
was one song.
The mountain one.
This is what I'm saying.
The one in the courtroom, the Joker is
that was good.
When there's a song where he's like imagining performing like in the courtroom, and he has these kind of like violent, like in this like hallucination or whatever dream like sequence. There's like these violent things while he's singing. But again, like when the movie, it kind of felt like it was embracing being a musical and was actually doing songs that weren't just characters singing to each other, but songs for the purposes of like moving the plot along or to, you know, show some sort of visual spectacle. It was actually somewhat compelling and interesting and exciting. The rest of the time it was boring.
Yeah. So The Joker is Me, that one I thought was pretty well done. And we're gonna build a mountain or something. Because is that the one where he starts tap dancing and stuff?
Yeah. And Lady Gaga's playing like the organ and the piano at the same time. And the other ones, even I'm not sure if those were like the original songs, but when they're singing on their like imaginary like talk show or whatever that they're both hosting. At least there's something like interesting visual to sort of look at, and there's a bit more, I don't know, flair behind it. It wasn't just them.
Yeah. But like the choices of song were bad. Like they just did a bunch. It's like it's a jukebox musical, which first of all, I already usually don't like jukebox musicals as much because you're trying to make a pre-made song fit into a plot, or a plot fit into a pre-made song, which never is going to like 100% really work.
Normally it's just like the chorus or something has some sort of connection to what's happening with the plot, and then the rest of it doesn't really make sense, but it's just...
Which this definitely suffered from that, where like these songs I don't feel like moved the plot along or developed the characters or really developed their relationships like in any way. Maybe besides The Joker Is Me. That one kind of felt like there was some kind of point to it. But otherwise they just start singing these like slow, boring songs that they could have done something more interesting with. But it was just usually just like jazz standards that they would just sing in these like soft, breathy voices. And it was so boring. I love musicals, but it was so boring.
No, I agree. It did pick up a little bit, like as soon as Lady Gaga's introduced and the singing like actually starts, then I was like a bit more like, all right, maybe we're starting to like, get somewhere. But then we're sort of treated to probably like half an hour of whenever there's a musical scene. It's just this minimalist accompaniment and breathy singing. It's just not exciting or anything.
Yeah. And it's often, you also want to have variety in the kinds of songs throughout. Like, you don't want every song to be sad. You don't want every song to be super peppy and happy. But it felt like almost every song was like the exact same, like tonally was exactly the same. I was just like, I'm so sick of this. So I don't want people to watch this because so many non-musical people are going to watch this and think this is what a movie musical is, or like, this is what a musical is. This is so bad and boring. It's just this. It's not all musicals.
I know you were interested in kind of doing an impassioned defense of movie musicals. And I think there has been I've read some stuff about like how even this movie, like they've been trying to hide the fact that it is a musical, even though we might dispute whether it is a musical or not, or deserves to be attributed as one. But even with like Wicked and things like that, I've seen some things saying that they're trying to not exactly make it super well known to people who wouldn't otherwise know that it is a musical, because it might turn away people, because there seems to be some sort of bias against musicals. But like, people love The Lion King and they love all these like Disney things. I think it's just people don't...
How could you not know Wicked's a musical? Yeah. You'd have to be living under a rock.
Well, one of my friends has actually seen Wicked, and then I said to him, you like musicals, you saw Wicked, and he was like, was Wicked a musical?
Oh,
now it was over 10 years ago, but so it's understandably maybe forgotten. But
Chris,
yeah,
come on. Well, okay, now I have ranted about the musical part of it. Another very random specific thing that really bugged me. He's always smoking in this.
Yeah, everyone's always smoking. It's fucking mental. Like, what's going on?
And like the end, I swear, the end of over half of the scenes were him smoking, tilting his head back, and blowing up the smoke. Like, you can't see me, but doing this. So many times I was like, this looks cool, but just do it once.
I feel like that happens in his like Joker persona during the first movie at one point, and the first time it happened when he like asked for a cigarette or whatever, I'm like, oh, I guess this is like a callback to that. But then it just kept happening, and I'm like, oh no, Lady Gaga's smoking as well. And then I'm like, everyone's smoking. I saw someone's review if it was like, was this movie produced by Big Tobacco? We're bringing smoking back through Joker 2. Where are we, in France?
I don't know.
Now time for my rant, I think.
Okay.
So basically, I thought the first Joker movie was like a good movie. I don't think it was like amazing. I thought the fact it was such a big box office draw and everything was kind of baffling. And I thought it was very derivative of better movies made by better filmmaker in Martin Scorsese, both being Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy. But I thought it was fine. What I've really sort of spoiled on over the years when I've thought about it is I just don't think the whole let's do the Joker origin story but make it realistic thing is an idea that really holds any value or merit. Like, I just don't think it's creatively interesting, because there's a lot of things in the first movie and in this movie where it's like they're just pulling stuff in from the established Batman comics and Batman adjacent things for people to be like, oh look, it's that thing, but as if it was realistic or whatever, and it just isn't interesting. Like, the Joker character in these movies is not the Joker from any Batman medium, because he's a mentally ill nutter he's not intelligent, he's not good at doing anything. The Joker persona that he sort of inhabits at times is when he gets closest to acting like that. But like, Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight isn't gonna like transform back into this sort of weirdo who can't like talk to people and is like laughing to himself and stuff. It's just not gonna happen.
Babe, I feel like you're acting like the society that puts him down and turns him into the Joker.
Well, he is weird. Yeah, I just don't know. I mean, the stuff where they have to set it in Gotham, but it's not. I mean, what would have been more interesting would be a guy who's obsessed with Batman and the Joker in particular, as if it's like a comic book thing, and then he has this kind of psychotic breakdown where he like dyes his hair green and paints his face white and kills people, as opposed to like just this really tenuous connection where the guy just so happens he already is working as a clown, so then he just dons some other clown makeup and kills some people and calls himself the Joker, and that's meant to be this Joker origin story. They don't really share anything apart from their aesthetic, you know?
Yeah, and it was interesting that in the first one he does have like an obsession with the Waynes, and he sees Bruce Wayne and thinks that
his mum tells him that he's Bruce Wayne's stepbrother, I suppose, because she says that she had an affair with Bruce Wayne's dad, Thomas Wayne.
And then they are not mentioned at all in this.
Yeah, I felt like the first movie did like a better job. I mean, it was one of the core parts of it, but sort of making out this kind of like class divide of these well-to-do rich people within Gotham who are like taking everything, and there's nothing left for this like underclass, and that's where, you know, criminal activity is running riot, and you know, people's mental health is being exacerbated, and they don't have the treatment to be able to do anything about it. But in this one, I mean, there was, by the end, made very clear to you there was this like undercurrent still existing because of the media circus that was surrounding the trial and the people's interest in making sure that Arthur was going free and stuff. But I don't know, like, I just felt like for how long the movie was, they could have done more sort of exposition, or maybe not exposition, but like world building to build on what they did in the first one. But it was like, we don't have time to do that because we have to have another song where Joaquin Phoenix sort of breathily sings down the phone to someone.
Oh, ridiculous. Okay, we do not have much more time, so we're going to go into spoilers now. And we were just talking about how this Joker doesn't really fit with the kind of DC Joker as he's known to fans and stuff. So at the end of this one, we have some random person from the prison.
Not a random person, because actually earlier in the movie they're panning around the inmates and it lingers on him for like a second or two,
and it like
longer than the other inmates.
Zooms in on him.
Yeah.
And then I whispered to you and I was like, who is that?
Yeah. And then I was like, I don't know. And we didn't see him again for 2 hours.
Yeah, until the very last scene. Then he's like, you want to hear a joke? Yeah. And then he stabs the Joker. Joker dies. And he, which I didn't notice, but he like
in the background of him as he's dying, the Joker, or Arthur Fleck, the guy who has stabbed him, you can sort of see him out of focus, like ripping the knife like across his mouth and sort of shrieking as if he's doing the whole mouth scars that Heath Ledger's Joker has.
Yeah,
that is
and
not,
like laughing.
Yeah, that is not something that is across every iteration of the Joker where he has to have these mouth scars, so I don't know why they felt like that has to happen.
Yeah, well, because people were saying then this is like implying that now he's becoming the Joker, and maybe his Joker is more the Joker that like we would think of.
But I didn't get it. Like, if you're gonna do that, like commit to it. Like, show this guy as being like, give him more of a role in the plot.
Right.
It just feels like lazy, like shoehorning of stuff in. Even with, again, Harvey Dent is the district attorney, and in the Batman lore, Harvey Dent is as you see in the film The Dark Knight. He's meant to be this like rock star DA who's like taking down the mob and stuff, and then he is ultimately corrupted and becomes this two-faced character, and there's a tragedy to that. But in this, you know, at the end of the movie, the courthouse is blown up completely randomly, which, I mean, in a better movie, that might have taken me by surprise, and I would have been like, whoa, but at this point, I was just kind of so, I mean, it might have sort of semi-woke me up when the explosion happened, because I was like, oh wow, something actually happened. Is this real? I'm not really sure. And I think you see him, and he's kind of like burned a little bit, so I guess that's meant to be like the Two-Face origin.
Becoming Two-Face.
But that isn't earned either, because there's nothing to make me think that he's had this like fall from grace or whatever. No. He's just like a lawyer.
And he looks so young. Not to say that young people can't be competent. But for me, and I think it would have, why I asked if Harley Quinn, why can I never do that? Harley Quinn did the explosion is because she's been shown throughout to be like a pyrotechnic. No, that's not the word. Pyromania? Pyromaniac.
Yeah.
So to me, it would make sense that I think maybe she was the one who blew it up.
Mm-hmm. I mean, doing an explosion would be a bit like a bomb would be a bit different from being a pyromaniac. That would just be setting things on fire. But
it creates fire.
Yeah. She could have set like a big fire next to like a stick of dynamite or something.
Yeah. Anyway, with that, I came up with what I think is a better ending to the Joker. So instead of having this random dude kill Arthur and then supposedly become the new Joker, Harley Quinn, right? She's like a fanatic of the Joker as a serial killer. She's like a little bit obsessed with him, which is why she comes and finds him, and why like she starts up this relationship is she's obsessed with the persona he has created as the Joker. Then he disappoints her in not actually really fulfilling who she thinks like the Joker should be. Like he lets her down in that aspect. She's demonstrated herself to be not so sane in the membrane. So wouldn't it be a better ending if she then kills Arthur and she becomes the Joker? Because she's already like obsessed with this idea of it. That would, to me, be like, I mean, it definitely wouldn't like solve the movie, but to me, that would be a more satisfying ending than this random person killing him and then cutting his face.
Yeah, I think also in that, I mean, you made the connection that maybe the Harley Quinn character is a commentary on, one, people get like really obsessed with like true crime and stuff, but particularly like Ted Bundy, who, I mean, actually, the whole thing is very similar to Ted Bundy, who also was a serial killer nut job and then represented himself in his own trial, escaped at one point and managed to get married to some weird obsessed super fan who I guess Harley Quinn would be kind of riffing off of. But yeah, we were also commenting maybe Harley Quinn could have been argued to be of like a complete figment of his imagination, because her whole origin seemed like very spurious, where she's like in the prison, but then Joker's lawyer says to him that she's actually from like a well-to-do background and checked herself into the asylum and then checked herself out again. But then she says she was checked in for burning down her parents' houses, but then she actually does burn some stuff down. So then it's like, and then she's let into his, when he's meant to be in the hole for 2 weeks, is like this extreme punishment. The hole, from anyone who's seen any prison movie ever, is where you're put in the black room, the dark rooms, solitary confinement. But then the guards just let her in and then they have sex.
So I was like, I was so sure that that was his imagination during that scene, because why would the guards just let her in? But then I was like, not sure. And then I was thinking, oh, it would be cool if she was actually not real. Like we said, she's part of the fantasy. She's just a figment of his imagination. That would have been cooler than what they did. But she, Harley Quinn, like interacts with other people that aren't Arthur, and so she clearly can't be a figment of his imagination. She must be a real person.
Yeah. She also, at one point, there was a weird scene where she's watching Joker, his interview with some like journalist, which I'm not sure why they're doing, but whatever. Yeah. She sees it on TV, like through a display case outside of an electronics store, and then it's as if she's like, oh, I need to like capture this memory forever. So she smashes the TV store's window and then steals the TV. But I mean, that would have been more compelling if it was like a picture or something. But like the TV, like now it's plugged in, it's not going to show that in anymore. You just have a TV.
Yeah.
A display TV might not even work properly.
Does it later show her watching him on that TV? Or am I making that up?
I don't think so. No.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's just like to further show her insanity. But yeah, there's a bunch of things like similar to that, small things that just don't really make sense.
Yeah. I think, I mean, in some really, I mean, I didn't really like the movie, but I think the concept, I mean, when it was announced, I know it was rumored that it was going to be a musical and Lady Gaga was going to be in it. I was like, that sounds cool. I think there is a foundation there where probably with a more talented screenwriter and director, maybe talented is the wrong idea, but just they could have had a couple of rewrites and made something better. They had the kind of core pieces to do something.
Yeah.
And I was actually anticipating when I was hearing that a lot of the negative criticism was about it being a musical or whatever. I was like actually expecting to like this one more because I was like, well, the musical part actually like appeals to me, but I just didn't think it was done well. So
exactly. Yeah, I think that they had some interesting concepts and ideas, but their execution was just bad and boring. That's a little harsh. It was definitely boring.
Well, it was bad, I think.
And bad.
I don't think it was. I don't think it's that harsh.
All right. So in sum,
yeah, well, I wouldn't recommend it.
maybe Joker not better as a musical.
And it's also not, Joker 2 done right is better as a musical. When
maybe we'll make
rewrite
that.
it, yeah. And I think it's like a shame, but it's one of those where it's not even so bad it's good. Like you recommend someone to go because it's like enjoyable. It's just boring.
No, that's what I was hoping it would be. Is so bad it's good type thing.
Also, kind of like unnecessarily violent and stuff to the point where it's like they're trying to be edgy. Kind of weird implication at one point where his Joker persona is ended because he gets sexually assaulted, which again is, I'm not sure what they were trying to suggest with that, but weird.
Yeah, just kind of a big boring ick. But I did maybe like it better than the first one.
More songs.
Yeah.
So he has a couple extra points for that. And there was actually a couple funny moments, just more not like haha laugh out loud funny, but more just like a sort of little chuckle to yourself with some characters' reactions, but they weren't enough and weren't funny enough to be worth the price of admission, I would say.
No, I think this was the first one in a long time where I genuinely felt like I would like my money back.
Yeah.
You
didn't even pay.
I would like my time back.
Yeah, that's ultimately time is limited, but money is not.
I more meant time. I'm just saying money because as someone who worked at a movie theater and could never imagine coming back and asking for my money back the way some people did after just not liking a movie, this is the first time I would have considered that route.
I mean, just for comparison, we watched Killers of the Flower Moon last year, which was 3.5 hours long, and I was way less bored watching that and way more compelled throughout the runtime than I was. I mean, after about 10 minutes in Joker, I was bored. So I think that, again, goes to show a lot with pacing. And I did think Killers of the Flower Moon was too long, to be honest.
Yes.
But just with better, more succinct script writing, more interesting plot, things like that.
Yeah.
Time is semi-immaterial in terms of how enjoyable an experience it can be. But, you just need to make sure you have a good movie to back it up. And in Joker 2's case, they didn't have that.
No. I think that is all we have to say.
Yeah.
So, in sum, would not recommend, but if you listen through the spoilers, then you probably already know that for yourself. So, remember to follow us on Instagram and TikTok for just announcements and extra content. All of that shebang. Shebang? Is that even a thing?
Yep, that's
all
the
that
shebang.
stuff. And of course, don't forget to have your daily, and we mean daily, bowl of popcorn.
And like and follow and everything on Instagram and that.
I already said that.
Oh yeah. Rate the podcast.
Rate the podcast.